Some Heart Left. If you can find it in a bookstore or find it online, pick it up. Really, really sweet story. While I was at TCAF, I also got to pick up another book from Jason. This is a small graphic novel called She's Always With Us, and it's a horror story, but there's an element of sweetness to it, kind of like a Sam Noir story, come to think of it. It's a story about a father and a daughter, very precocious daughter. Instantly made me think of Victoria and myself. Dad's a really good guy, really loves his daughter. And one night his daughter goes out into the woods for a game of hide and seek. And so he goes into the woods to try to find her. And he's trying to follow her voice. And we get the sense that there is something going on in the woods. I can't tell you what, but there are different voices. And even though the story has a nice resolution to it, it's very sweet, and we get the idea that life is going to go on, there is that real creep factor. Like, what is it? Or who is it, perhaps, in the woods? And what's going to happen next time this little girl goes out to play hide and seek with her dad? Just some great art from Jason, and really interesting to see him move away from comedy and action genre and look at supernatural and horror. Really good stuff. Like Sam, Jason is one of those comics creators whose new work I will pick up sight unseen. If I hear that they're coming out with a new project, I will immediately support it, or if I see a physical copy, I will pick it up right away because I know that I will enjoy it. Okay, now for Chapter House. Things have been tough from what I can sense, and from what I've read on Facebook and from what I've seen being posted. It sounds like this is a company that's in a time of transition, and it's not an easy transition. I don't think for a small independent publisher like Chapter House, that level of transition is ever easy, but it seems tough. It seems like the company is trying to find a particular direction, specifically whether to go all digital or to go with the DC or Marvel model, physical copies, but day and date releases digitally. And I know the big thing that's really been hampering Chapter House in more recent times has been that search for a printer that can print monthly titles, but at the cost of Chapter House, where the company can make the retail price of its books $1.99 per issue. And believe me, I find that incredibly honorable, because you look at DC and Marvel and other publishers, I'm talking bigger publishers, like Image. They're charging $3.99, $4.99 or more per book. And I'm not talking about people like Sam and other small press publishers who are paying for things out of pocket. They have to charge those prices because, one, they've got to put food on the table, and two, they've got to recoup the investment which they've made. But to see a company like Chapter House say, no, let's bring the line down to $1.99 a book, I think that's really admirable. Is it something that's realistic, though? That's the issue, because of course printers are going to charge a fair amount for printing things. I think in that search for a printer, that's one of the things that's led to delays in the books. Like, I'm thinking it was a couple of years ago when I spoke about the big year-long event that was going to usher in this united chapter verse that would bring together all of the characters in the Chapter House line of titles and put them all in the same universe. And it seems that that year-long story wrapped up only sometime last year. So it was well behind schedule. And I have to admit, folks, I lost track with that story because, having a child and having a child who was growing up on me, took my time away from being able to go to the comic book store. And so it was frustrating during those times where, I did have a moment to go to a store, or go to a store that was stroller friendly, and to find that no, the books weren't there, and to go online and see that no, they weren't there. There was delay after delay after delay. And I think, it certainly also has to do with the overhaul, which has gone on at different layers or levels of Chapter House staff. But I've got to put it this way. I think for a company like Chapter House, it's great that they want to do traditional print copies, but I think in this day and age, for a publisher the size of Chapter House, they really need to go that all-digital format. For different reasons. I mean, one, we are moving towards a paperless society. It's something which I talk about in my geography classes. I tell my students, hey, one of the ways to make our society more sustainable is to move away from scads of paper, shift towards things like online textbooks, PDFs. My dream is that one day all of my students will have a laptop, and I can set up folders in, let's say, Google Docs, and they can store all of their notes for all of their subjects there. No need for paper. When they do homework, they can type it, send it to me via Google Docs. I can mark it, send it back. Actually, I don't even have to send it back. Once you share a document on Google Docs, people who are sharing a document can make changes at any time. There's no need for that back and forth with the email. I think about kids today. Kids today are moving towards more digital items, whether it be comic books or hockey cards. And honestly, how many parents are going to be okay with their kids spending $4 or $5, maybe even $2, on a 20-page book that they may read once and never pick up again? Also, thinking about how, a lot of the comics fandom is getting older, like me. And there are certain realities in life where we're not able to get to the store every Wednesday, much as we would like to. The reality is that between family commitments and work commitments, we really need to be able to pick up certain things at home. And I'm growing more and more accustomed to reading things digitally. And it's only for certain things like the final issue of Pitiful Human Lizard or the works of Sam Noir, for which I'm going for the physical copies. Otherwise, I'm happy to go with digital. So, I wish Chapter House the best of luck, and I just hope that they get back on track with their releases, because it seems to me like things are falling behind with Captain Canuck's story. There was another free comic book day issue which I could not get and is not available digitally, and it bothers me because it's the first chapter of year 1 of Captain Canuck, and I'd really love to read that and get more of a perspective on the Chapter House version of Tom Evans' background and his first year wearing the armor and going by the name Captain Canuck. And when I do get my hands on a copy of this year's Free Comic Book Day issue of Captain Canuck, I'll review it, but I'm apprehensive because based on something I've heard about happening in that issue, I don't know how I feel. But I have mostly positive things to say about the July 2018 issue of Captain Canuck, subtitled Invasion. It's by Jay Baruchel and Van Jensen. Principal art by Leonard Kirk. And it's basically sort of a transition issue in that the Borealis already started the groundwork for their invasion of Earth, as told across that year-long storyline, which linked all of the Chapter House titles together. And here, most of the story takes place in the United Nations building, where we see Prime Minister Justin Trudeau having words with the current United States President, as well as Russian President Vladimir Putin. They come across as very true to the way they're presented in the real world, in the media. Trudeau comes across as very conciliatory and sage in his words of advice. The U.S. President comes across as a real blowhard, pardon the language, and Putin comes across as very cerebral. But this is the issue where the Borealis, who come from a very alien world, announce their intention to annihilate humanity. And so it starts with the near destruction of the CN Tower and a quick save by Captain Canuck. It just brings us up to speed on all of the heroes who exist in Chapterverse. And so we get to see Pitiful Human Lizard for perhaps the last time in the scenes here. The artwork by Kirk and Verek, my apologies for any name butchery there, is pretty good. The characterization comes across as very good, certainly for Captain Canuck. What bothers me is the presentation of Yvette Arsenault, a.k.a. Quebec. When Kalman Andrzejowski introduced Quebec, he introduced her as somebody who has Asperger's syndrome, and that was very interesting to see a character with Asperger's being presented in comics. And I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but Victoria is on the autistic spectrum. And while autism and Asperger's are not the same thing, there are certain commonalities between the two. And so really nice for me seeing a character like Quebec. I'm thinking that in years' time, maybe Victoria might look at Quebec and say, oh, that's kind of neat. I can kind of identify there. It really shows that Mr. Andrzejowski is no longer on the book, because here, Quebec comes across as somebody who is more outspoken and whose speech mannerisms are very different here. And I think that's entirely to do with inconsistency in the writing. And so I'm hoping that going forward, Mr. Baruchel, who has also come on as the new Chief Creative Officer, takes that time to really read up on what's come before, to make sure that his portrayal of all of the characters comes across as much more consistent in the books which he reads. And again, I'm hoping that we're going to see that much more content come from Chapter House. I am very quickly near the end of my timer, folks, so I can tell you that in 2 weeks, episode 131 will come your way. It's a 4-parter, folks. I'm going to be looking at Hal Jordan as the host of The Spectre. Looking forward to bringing that to you all. In the meantime, you can email me at comicsandhistory@gmail.com, or you can go on over to Facebook and like the Comics and History Facebook page for updates on upcoming show releases. Until another 14 days have come and gone, this class is dismissed.